Hey, welcome everybody. It's Mistress Roz.
It's Dame Dot.
And tonight we have a very special guest with us, the Kingdom DEI officer. I'll let you
The
introduce
Honorable Lady Dominica.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. We're kicking off a summer series where we're talking with various kingdom officers and what they do in our kingdom and with the society at large. So we thought we would jump headfirst in and talk to the DEI officer. So again, Lady
First, Honorable Lady Dominica, sorry. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us some of your background into this topic and a little bit about the office itself.
Okay, so my name in the SCA is the Honorable Lady Dominica Mackerel, but mundanely I'm known as Renee Carroll, and I have taught at various online and ground campuses for the last 15 years now. And for Southern New Hampshire specifically, I taught diversity classes, and I still teach those, but I also teach some intro to liberal arts type courses as well. But my background is in sociology and criminal justice, so I teach that as well. I've also been project manager for 2 different NSF funded STEM grants that work with people who are from different groups that would fall under the DEI spectrum, and specifically their underrepresented groups. And it was designed to give them better educational opportunities. So both of the grants I worked for were focused on equity and inclusion.
So mundanely, you have a background on this topic, and then you've been doing this office. How long have you held this office for us?
Since August, so it's been almost a year. I'll be looking for a deputy soon.
Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Great to know. So you want to dive right in, Roz? And
Sure. So first question is, what is your definition and the meaning of diversity for the SCA and for Gleann Abhann?
Okay, so I'll address the SCA first. And I want to begin by saying that diversity means different things to different people, and it consists of different experiences and backgrounds. So for me, diversity is not just what I see when I look at people. It's what I hear when I'm at events. It's what I taste in the food I eat at feast. It's what I learn when I participate in different activities offered at different events. And it's in the experiences I see during court, during elevations, during tournaments, and during A&S competitions. It's what I see and experience when I work as a group officer or as a part of event staff. Diversity is in our personas and in us as individuals. That's what makes the SCA so unique. It gives us the opportunity to create our own diverse historical persona and bring that diversity to life in a way that encompasses how we dress and how we express ourselves. And in the process, we learn about life in different times and different places. And that's one thing that diversity does. It varies based on time and place. Diversity is wonderful because it brings people of different ages, cultures, abilities, genders, military status, race, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status together in a common place. So for us, that common place is the SCA. And as I mentioned before, diversity varies from place to place. So diversity in Gleann Abhann is going to be different than diversity in other kingdoms like Caid, North Shield, or Anstiora. And differences in our population mean different diverse experiences. And we get to bring those together at events like Pennsic and Gulf Wars. And we see that transmission of our different cultures there as well, which is wonderful. And diversity, as I mentioned, does vary over time because the diversity of a population is subject to change. And so that means that our definitions of diversity might change too. And so that's when I'm talking about overall with the SCA. But looking at Gleann Abhann, and keeping in mind that diversity means different things to different people, and that means different experiences and backgrounds play into that. The way diversity is defined in Gleann Abhann, again, as I mentioned before, would be very different than how it's defined in other kingdoms. I've not taken or participated in a census, but I've noticed through observing events in social media that as a kingdom, we seem to have large populations of veterans, older people, and members of the LGBTQIA+ community. Now, this observation might not hold true in other kingdoms, but it helps define diversity in our kingdom, and it shapes my work as DEI officer.
So basically, diversity is very fluid. It could be one thing 1 minute, and then a year from now, it could look totally different depending on your populace and the makeup of the populace, correct?
Exactly.
And so with that guideline, what does inclusion mean? How do you go from knowing your population to the inclusion side of your office?
Okay, well, first of all, there's an E in DEI, so I can't define inclusion without defining equity. Different people have different needs. And again, as I mentioned, diversity is fluid, and these needs relate to the SCA. So equity means we do different things to make sure those needs are met. And then by meeting those needs, we're making sure that people can participate and realize their potential as members of the SCA. One of the most common examples of this is making sure event sites have disability access so that people can access sites regardless of their ability. In other words, inclusion is not possible without equity. So it is important to keep in mind that inclusivity is something that comes not just from our words, but from our actions too. If we work together to meet everyone's basic needs, then we're better able to value, respect, and create connections with one another. And I always fall back on, since I've taken this office and since the SCA DEI strategic initiative came out, I like their definition of inclusion. It occurs when people feel and are valued and respected, allowing us to learn from and connect with each other. And when we feel we are included, we feel we belong.
And just to jump in real quick, so that's where the new belonging, which was added to the society office, is that correct? DEIB.
This particular definition from the strategic initiative was actually released before they added the B to it. Okay. But I think that it definitely falls in line with that initiative, the B for belonging. And again, that goes back to what I said about it not just being the words we say, because it's easy to say, sure, you're included. It's in the actions that we take too. And it's, all of us are responsible for that.
And you kind of answered what my next question was, which was the definition of inclusion as well. So I think that was a wonderful explanation of all of those terms that we hear. The SCA has always seemed to be extremely welcoming to people, just open, just come out and as we say, our one rule is just make an effort at a medieval costume. So why is DEI so important of a topic of discussion in the SCA, knowing that how welcoming the SCA is?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, DEI is an important topic of discussion for the SCA specifically because we are so welcoming. One way to better welcome people is to understand what they need. Knowing the diversity of our populace helps us with that. When I have a house guest, I like to know in advance what they like or need so their experience at my house is a good one. In this case, the SCA is our house. As I mentioned earlier, our needs change and vary over time, and the past 3 years have been a great example of this. When the pandemic happened, social media was our only outlet for participation in the SCA. And that use of social media for communication, teaching classes, and even holding court or having virtual events helped us realize a new and, for us, uncharted and diverse area for us to use to connect with one another. And as the pandemic ended and we began meeting in person again, we realized that our social world had grown to include online spaces along with physical spaces. And DEI can help us explore how those spaces work separately and together to provide us with the best possible experience we can get in the SCA, regardless of our differences.
I was pretty tickled. I thought Gleann Abhann social media rose to the challenge during that time. So
We sure did try.
You really did.
we
and-
tried.
And you don't really, so when I thought about this whole DEI interview and stuff, I didn't really think about social media being part of that, but we do open it up to people who may not be able to travel. It does give them an insight and allows them to still participate and still stay at home if they are not able to get on the roads or travel or make it to an event. And that's what it's all about, including everybody in our, or trying to include everybody in our populace, correct?
I mean, online, yes, online spaces are actually a big part of what my plan is and things that I want to do as a DEI officer, because of the inroads it made with inclusion and really the things that I think that we can do with it in terms of inclusion.
So remember to like and subscribe. You did good there, Roz.
I've had several people tell me, you mean Gleann Abhann's got, a YouTube page? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. They've got a YouTube page.
And we
And-
I think
and,
we have the best TikTok,
TikTok.
I think, in the known world.
I'm just saying. check out
Challenge.
TikTok.
I will
Look
not
at the
argue
links
that.
below.
I
Yeah.
will not argue that. That's part of the reason I agreed to do this interview, because you're both very talented ladies.
Well,
I'm
thank you.
confident in your
Thank you.
abilities.
All right,
If I'm
so
having
now
a bad
let's,
hair day.
oh, don't even look at that hair.
Mm-mm.
Go for it. Okay, so now we're gonna roll it into events. So what's one thing that me as an individual can do at events to help with this goal of inclusion?
Okay. So let's see. What you can do at events in Gleann Abhann to make them more inclusive. We already do so many things at events that promote inclusivity. I mean, and it's things that we don't even think about, like children's activities, recognition of veterans in court, making sure sites have disability access, One thing you can do if you're event staff is keep in mind that some people have sensory issues. So even if the event itself hasn't set aside a quiet space, if you see that someone's struggling, you could help them find a quiet space. Social media does a great job of providing those who cannot attend events with footage of tournaments and other activities at events. But another thing that we can do when possible is offer online options for classes we teach. And that way, if for any reason someone cannot attend an event, they can still connect virtually. I mean, and also just listening to someone can make a big difference. I learned that just walking around and kind of talking to people at events, introducing myself, saying, hi, I'm the DEI officers. Is there anything that you would like to talk about? And just sitting down and listening and hearing what people have to say about diversity.
And that's opening up and getting that belonging feeling back. Is that whole
Yes.
B? I didn't know B was added to it. So I've learned something here today, and I think that's kind of a wonderful thing, because I've always felt like I belong, but that might not be everybody's experience, and we want to change that and add that B.
So my questions were also very similar to what Dot just asked about, what is something that we as individuals can do to positively impact, inclusion and belonging at.
I'm so glad that you've asked that.
Okay.
Absolutely, 100% create safe spaces. And I know the term safe space is viewed negatively by some, but for the purposes of my conversation that I'm having with you, safe spaces are spaces virtually or in person. That's an important distinction to make, where anyone can go and be treated with respect and courtesy, regardless of their differences. And that falls right in line with our kingdom's mission, right? Honor and courtesy above all. Pre-pandemic, as an organization, we were familiar with the concept of making sure our campsites were inclusive and that we welcomed people who came to our events. Now, post-pandemic, as an organization, I feel like we must work to shift those same values over to our virtual classrooms, social media sites, and other online spaces. I feel like it's important that we practice the same courtesy and spirit of inclusion online that we do in person. And DEI helps us put plans in place to do that. And that is one of the reasons why DEI is sorely needed in the SCA today.
With this online new world that has it come out, and I don't really know where I'm going with it. Could you give us some advice as to how do you build a safe space online? What do you look for? What do you do? I know I'm throwing this way out there, but what do you do if you get that bully online? If it's on your page, and how do you create that space?
Well, I think that of course I'm a big proponent of classes. I like teaching them so much that I do it in real life and in the SCA. I don't think there would be a thing wrong with teaching some basic, just basic netiquette. Some people could use a refresher on that, and just ways that we can relate. Just being able to, I'd love to teach a class on virtual spaces versus in-person spaces. That way, I can demonstrate things we do in person and how that can translate online. I think that a lot of times it's harder for us to connect online when we don't see a face. And sometimes it's harder to hold ourselves accountable too, because we feel like we can be more free in how we speak. And sometimes, intentional or not, that hurts people. And I think that being able to point these things out and try to set up spaces that promote that and that hold true to the values that we're already practicing in person is really going to help build that trust in those spaces.
Well, if social media can help you, get those classes going, we're here for to make that happen.
And that's a great idea.
That's a phone call, just so everybody knows.
You wouldn't think that you would have to teach that, but I love that netiquette. I love that. But you wouldn't think that you would have to, but I think you kind of do, because you can't get tone and inflection and meaning behind typed words all the time.
And I teach online, and you wouldn't believe how many of my students who don't have computer experience that come into the online world do not know that if you type in all caps, you're shouting at someone.
Yeah.
And so that's one reason why it's important. And also that way everyone's on the same page, because right now we're kind of floating with minimal expectations, and it's good if everyone's able to learn and get on the same page and then agree on what constitutes making spaces just safer and more enjoyable online for everyone.
Well, I'm looking forward
I like
to
that last phrase, safer and enjoyable for everybody online. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, me too.
Right, Donna asked the last question. Do you have one?
I'm good. I think that, is there anything that you think that we have not covered that you would like to mention?
No, just that I'm planning to teach a class online soon, so be on the lookout for a post about that. And I want to try to have as DEI officer, I want to try to have a strong online presence. That way we can work on getting our virtual space in line with what we already do on site. Because I think we could really create something wonderful in terms of diversity, and it just gives us so many more ways that people can be included. I'm really big on the fact that I've talked to so many people who can't afford to go to events, and I love the idea of classes being made available to them that way, so that they can sit into and learn, and so that they stay connected to us. Everyone goes through hard times, and I just think it's important that everyone has that access, even when they're going through a hard time. That's when they need it most, honestly.
Mhm.
Right. Some things that it's some things that you don't think about when this topic of DEI comes up. It's very
Right.
fluid. It doesn't have to be what our first thought of diversity is. It could be socioeconomical, like you said, veterans. I grew up in a military household. I never thought
Mhm.
of that being something that made someone different, but for somebody that wasn't in the military, it's a totally different outlook, or they've gone through many things that I have never gone through. You know what I mean? So it's diversity is a really interesting and wide topic. So thank you for taking your time this evening to spend with us and to explain some of it.
Yeah, we really
Well, thank you
appreciate
so much for having me. So I really appreciate it.
And if anybody needs to get in touch with you, how can they do it?
They can email me at dei@gleanabhann.net, or they can reach out to me on Facebook, Renee Carroll, ReneeCarroll.
And when
And
will be
I'll be glad to talk to you about it.
and when will you be looking for your deputy? Is that what you were going to ask, Ross?
Yes, I'm going to be putting something out there for that in August. And
In August. Okay.
my plan when I do that, so spoiler alert, I'm waiting until I have a deputy on hand, and at that point, I'm going to coordinate with my deputy so that we can come up with a small group of people to help us write a DEI handbook for Gleann Abhann.
Awesome.
Sounds great.
And
Yeah.
I really want to have my deputy in on that from the ground up so that they know stepping into the office and had a hand in creating it. I think that's important.
That's great. Great. So I'm good here. Roz, you good?
I'm great. I've learned some things tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Dominica, thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for joining us again.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.